But I kind of teased it 2 weeks ago. I want to talk about Notre Dame a little bit. Had a question from a friend of mine, Wilson. Shout out Wilson from South Carolina. I'll just read it here. It says, I would be interested to hear your thoughts on whether Notre Dame not playing for a conference championship cost them a playoff spot. And if so, would you be for them joining the ACC? So, kind of two different questions there. The second one, of course, is the age old question: should Notre Dame join the ACC? First of all, I'd like to talk about this season. You cool with it? Like, because I feel like it's two separate questions. Like,
Yes.
is
Yeah,
that
no, I
fair?
agree. Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
So let's look at 2021. We all know this was a pretty bad year for the ACC. Clemson kind of being the main reason, just because normally the ACC could count on Clemson being a top four team.
Right.
This year they were not. They lost 3 games. So I thought I'd look at the F plus ratings. I'm sorry, which combines two of my favorite analytic models, I guess, FEI and SP plus. FEI is more drive based. SP plus is more individual play based. So combined, I think they make a pretty good metric. Um, in the F plus rankings this season, Notre Dame finished ninth in the country. The highest ranked ACC team at the end of the season, and their model was Clemson at 15. You had Pittsburgh at 17, NC State at 18, and Wake Forest at 26. That's kind of the top. You have to go a little ways after that to get to anybody else. So Notre Dame was, I would say, better than any other ACC team. The other thing we have to remember is Notre Dame's one regular season loss was to Cincinnati.
Who is
If
the
no,
4 seed, by the way? Yeah.
yes, if Notre Dame was in the ACC, they would not be playing Cincinnati in the non-conference. That's not a thing that would happen. I do think that. So I guess to fully answer this question, we have to ask what would a Notre Dame schedule look like if they were in the ACC? Obviously, they'd play mostly ACC teams. Um, it depends. Notre Dame has 7 traditional rivals, 3 that they play every year: USC, Stanford, and Navy.
Yeah.
I think USC and Navy would probably stay on the schedule. Remind me, how many games does the ACC play? Do they play an 8 or 9 game schedule?
They play 9.
Yeah. So if Notre Dame was in the ACC with a 9 game schedule, you'd have those 9. USC and Navy, I'm sorry, would make 11, and then most likely at that point, because you'd be playing 10 Power Five teams, like if they would follow the model of any other Power Five team, they would schedule Ball State or something for their 12th game. That would be their schedule. So they would play ACC teams and USC basically. So yeah, I think Notre Dame would have gone undefeated this last year and probably made the playoff. They probably would have gotten killed because I don't think this was one of Notre Dame's best teams in the last 5 years or so. And they did make 2 playoffs. I think this was probably a worse team than the 2 previous Notre Dame teams that made the playoff. Any rebuttal to anything I've said so far?
I mean, I guess the only thing I would hit back at is like how you wouldn't be playing Cincinnati in the non-con. Like, I think we're seeing non-con games overall take a big step forward, and like that is still a possibility that you could hypothetically still be playing. Then that doesn't, it maybe lessens the chance a bit, because like you go from independent, where you have to schedule every year kind of from scratch to like you have some structure, but like you still do have non-con games, and like you still could play Cincinnati. Like I don't know, like the question there is I don't know, maybe kind of tough, because like I don't think that, okay, like we mentioned, like they're probably not one of the 4 best teams this year, or they
Right.
weren't. Like they got
They
beat
finished
by,
ninth in
right,
F plus, yeah, which
right,
sounds about right.
right. They got beat by 2 scores by Cincinnati at home, and Cincinnati was a playoff team and didn't get blown off the field, but was significantly worse than the others. Like,
Sure.
I think we can say that. And
At least Alabama and Georgia.
right. Well, yeah. I mean, yes. No, valid. You could argue like them and Michigan actually would have been like a really good game. Like if we could have like a bronze medal game, that would be kind of neat. Like right before the championship, but we don't. So the like Cincinnati is the, I think maybe it kind of is it's a bad year to ask this question. I think like in other years, I think it would have been maybe a little bit easier. Last year, for example, had you beaten Clemson, like like when Notre Dame was in the ACC last year, the COVID year, like you played Clemson twice that year, right? You split
Hmm.
with them, and
Yes.
like that's what it would have looked like this year probably too. Had like you know what I mean? Like it
Sure.
probably would have been similar. Like you almost certainly would have made the conference championship game, probably go undefeated, depending like what side. Any idea what side they would put you on had you joined?
So I think I don't know. I feel like because that would make it 15 teams in the ACC,
Yeah.
and Power Five conferences are starting to look at pod scheduling, which I'm a
Yes.
huge fan of compared to divisions. I would guess if Notre Dame would join the ACC, they would probably go to a pod system, which basically would just mean you play two or three teams. There's a couple different ways to do it. I would guess the ACC would probably do three teams. Every team has three permanent opponents. Instead of playing six division opponents every year, you play three essentially every year, and then the rest of your schedule cycles through. That way, you play with the other teams in the other division more often. Because right now, Alabama and Georgia, they play each other in the regular season once every 8 years or something, like, and they're conference opponents. Now, obviously, with that example, they have plenty of chances to play each other
Right. We play them
because,
enough. Believe me,
yeah,
we don't
yeah,
need any more
sure,
of that.
that
We
was
don't need
maybe
any
not
more
a
of
great
that.
example.
No, it was not. You've done better.
If we go to the ACC, for example, Clemson and Miami, they would play each other every other year, maybe instead of every how often they play, which is probably 7 or 8 years. Um, so I think if Notre Dame would join the ACC, that would probably be the reality. So they'd probably have three permanent opponents from the ACC. Um, so yeah, and that's in that model, the top two teams then, regardless of what pod they're in, they make the conference championship game. So
Right.
most likely that would have been Notre Dame this year, and then who knows? It would have been interesting. Obviously, Pitt and Wake Forest were the ones that actually made the real ACC championship game. So most likely Notre Dame would. I would think the ACC would make Clemson one of their permanent opponents. I don't know for sure. Boston College
Yeah.
would be the only one that would be for certain, and probably Pitt. Clemson might be the other one, so that could be fun. I do think like if Notre Dame would have caught Clemson before November last year, they for sure would have beaten them. November would have been, who knows? Like Clemson had improved enough by November that it would have definitely been a close matchup, I think. So I tend to think that just as far as ACC scheduling goes, Notre Dame would have been in the conference championship game, probably would have played Pitt or Wake Forest, and I think that I like their chances quite well in those situations.
So I think maybe for me the question, and like I don't mind Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame, I don't feel strongly for them or against them, right?
You're the
Like
only
they're
person in America.
right. I like to think that I am. Like I really don't feel strongly about them. Like I respect them. I think when Georgia plays Notre Dame, those games were legendary. I think they were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I think they're a good ad for any conference. I'd say that. But like with that being said, I don't think that they're better by joining a conference. So I think there's maybe a lot of people out there that talk about like you need to join and that'll help you get over the hump. Maybe. And would they have gotten into the playoff this year? Yeah, maybe. Probably a good chance actually. But would it have mattered? No. It's still the ninth
Sure.
best team in the nation getting into the
Yeah.
to the top four. Like that's actually what would have happened there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not really a good thing. I Notre Dame has made the playoff before, and they have gotten beat by quite a bit. Now you can say they gave a decent account of themselves last year against Alabama, where everyone got smoked by Alabama. Like Alabama handled everyone, and Notre Dame was just kind of another name on the list. It wasn't worse than anyone else really. So like I don't know that you can say that we've had three playoff appearances now, or if you're in there for a while you can rack up the appearances, but does it make you a better football team? I mean, does it help with recruiting? Like maybe a little bit, but does it make you a better football team? And I don't feel that it does. Like I think that you have to be a good
No.
team, and you can be a good team as an independent. I think Notre Dame can do that as an independent. I think Notre Dame really, if they would cut loose on some of the NIL stuff, which they probably never will, but if they would and just really go all in, Notre Dame has the money to compete with anybody. They really do. They have the support there that you could see them recruiting on a level with Ohio State or even better. And maybe they will. Like we'll see. But like you don't have to go to the ACC to be considered a contender. You don't. And I think there's a lot of people out there. You can call them purists. Like everyone needs to play on the same field. They don't like the independence out there. I've enjoyed it. Like I don't mind it at all. I think Notre Dame a lot of years plays a tougher schedule. You could argue their schedule this past year would have gotten much easier had they joined the ACC. Had they joined the Pac-12, it would have probably been easier than the schedule they played anyway. You could the Big 12. They probably would have won the Big 12 too. Like they could have won multiple of these conferences, with the exception of probably the Big 10 and the SEC, and they're still the ninth best team in America. So I don't know. It's a tough argument. I think it's very unclear. Like it's very muddy. Like there's no real clear answer. But my personal opinion is they're fine where they're at. Should they choose to stay there? Like they have a great deal with NBC. Why would you want to go somewhere else? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I want to get more into that a little bit with kind of the second part of this question. Um, as far as just this last season, I do think Notre Dame probably would have made the playoff. But I guess since you're kind of going there, I think the whole conference versus independent thing for Notre Dame, you kind of touched on a little bit. Like it's not a moot point, but it's a little bit of an overrated discussion point, I think. Um, yeah, Notre Dame, they can be whatever. Like I don't think that being independent is either a huge boon for them or a huge thing holding them back. Either way, like I don't think there's definitely things that would change if they would join the ACC, and maybe I'll talk about some of that stuff now just a little bit. So yeah. Anyway, also I was going to mention part of the reason I think Notre Dame probably would have been fine if they had been in the ACC this last year. In the last 4 years, Notre Dame has played 24 regular season games against ACC opponents. They're 24-0.
Really?
Yes. So their senior class that just graduated never lost a regular season game in 24 tries against ACC teams.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, Notre Dame has a kind of a partial membership with the ACC where they play an average of 5 ACC teams every season.
Right.
Some years it's 4, some years it's 6. Just the way the schedules work out. But on average, it's 5 every year. They play all of them. They play every team in the ACC. And obviously I mentioned they're 24-0 in regular season the last 4 years. Obviously they did lose the rematch to Clemson in the ACC championship game
Right.
in 2020. A game that Clemson needed to make the playoff. Notre Dame did not.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think there's a few ways of looking at this. One of the things I like to talk about with the Notre Dame schedule is just if Notre Dame would join the ACC, like you could make it work. Especially we talk about with pod scheduling, it'd be kind of fun if they made Clemson one of the permanent opponents. Obviously, I think most people would sign up to watch that every year. Notre Dame Clemson, that'd be a good matchup.
Sure.
The issue is, I would say the rest of the schedule. I think just from a pure college football standpoint, the rest of the schedule would be more boring. And the reason I think that, I mentioned Notre Dame has 7 traditional rivals. Ironically, the one they don't have a trophy with is Michigan, who most people would probably pick out as one of Notre Dame's biggest rivals. They actually don't play Michigan that often anymore. USC, Navy, and Stanford are the ones they play every season. USC, I would say, is pretty much non-negotiable. Like that is known as the biggest non-conference rivalry in college football. Navy, I think, to the Notre Dame administration, is also kind of seen as non-negotiable, just because in World War II, Navy started using Notre Dame as a base, as a training base, and that's kind of what propelled them to, I don't know, greater success or something. And just it helped the university side of things out
Sure.
a lot too.
Yeah.
So
PR.
from a pure football point, it doesn't make any sense to play Navy every year. We've seen enough defensive linemen tear their ACLs getting cut block the entire game.
It's the worst.
Most of us fans of Notre Dame hate playing Navy every year, but from a university standpoint, I guess that's the reason they play them every year. Stanford, I think they could pretty easily discard that one. Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, and Boston College are all occasional rivals. Boston College, if they would join the ACC, they would. I'm sure that would be one of their permanent opponents. All right. if we look at the rest of their schedule, so here's what Notre Dame does currently. They schedule 5 ACC teams. They schedule USC and they schedule Navy and Stanford. So that's 8 teams right there. The rest of their 4 games, usually they play 2 group of 5 teams or so, which is kind of what the rest of the country does, and then they usually schedule a couple other 1 or 2 good, awesome games. Here's a list of teams that Notre Dame has played in the or scheduled in the 21st century. Some of these are still yet to happen, but they are scheduled. They're on the schedule. So I'm going to run down through the 5 Power 5 conferences. There's 5 Power 5 conferences. I'm going to list the big names. This is not even all of the teams Notre Dame has played or scheduled. These are the big names. From the ACC, obviously they play all of them, but that includes Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and Virginia Tech. From the SEC, Notre Dame has scheduled in the 21st century Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas A&M, Arkansas. From the Big Ten, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Nebraska. From the Big 12, Oklahoma, Texas. From the Pac-12, USC, Stanford, Arizona State, Utah, Washington, UCLA. And then the best group of 5 team, the only group of 5 team that has ever made the playoff, we've mentioned them, Cincinnati. Notre Dame played them this year. So the biggest names that Notre Dame has not scheduled in the 21st century are LSU, who they beat twice in bowl games in the last decade, Auburn, Oregon, and then you gotta go to like Oklahoma State before you find somebody else. Like
Right.
basically, if you're a top 20 program, Notre Dame schedules you. Notre Dame will play you if you are a top 20 program. They clearly have shown that to be the case. Here's a complete list of FBS teams, the top level Division I football that has never faced an FCS team. These are your Woffords and whatever, like these schools that
Cupcakes.
cupcakes, like legit cupcakes.
Yeah.
The second level of college football, and a lot of teams in the top level of college football play one of these every single season. Here's a complete list of teams that have never scheduled one: USC, UCLA, Notre Dame. That's it. That's the list. Notre Dame never plays an FCS school, and they play literally all of the big time, big name programs out there. As a college football fan, I think those matchups are awesome. And the bottom line is, if Notre Dame would join a conference, especially if they had a 9 game conference schedule, you'd have your 9 games in conference. So you'd play your Wake Forest and your Duke and whoever from the ACC that no one cares to watch. And then you'd play your USC and your Navy like you do every year. And then you'd probably play Roast Beef State as your number 12 game. You'd play your Ball State or whatever. Toledo. You would very rarely see Notre Dame play all these other big name programs. So as just a pure college football fan, I think that would be a worse product. How are you tracking with me so far?
Completely agree. I think there's a lot of people out there that think, or at least they feel like Notre Dame is dodging, like Notre Dame's not joining a conference because they're dodging the opposition. And like I think I think both are on the same side of that. Is like that's just not true. You can look through who they played and who they will be playing. They're starting out against Ohio State next year.
Yes.
They're playing the top teams, and you just ran through them all. And I feel like Notre Dame's schedule is harder than a lot of the Power Five schedules that people are wanting them to join. There's no question it would have been this year had they been in the ACC. So I guess maybe my question is where do you want them to be? Where do these people want Notre Dame to be? Like, do you want me to be playing these marquee big time matchups, which are fun? Like Georgia played Notre Dame. It's my team versus your team in a home and home. That was great. Those were like really good, highly televised. The tickets for those games were astronomical. Like that's what college football is. That's what people love about it. Is the games that we don't always get to see, and you don't see it happen every year. But like traditional powers, Georgia and Notre Dame getting to play a home and home at each stadium. That's awesome, and I think that should be to Notre Dame's credit. Like that's cool what they do. Like I really like that. And like why are we wanting them to go play more games against Wake Forest and Duke? Like that's where maybe I'm not sure on. And if I'm Notre Dame, I don't think I would be caving to it. I really don't. I think they're at a good place where they were. They've proven that they can win with that schedule. and they've proven they can make the playoff with that schedule. And by the way, would have made the playoff this year had they beaten Cincinnati, who ended up in the playoff. So like it's all out there in front of you. Like it's not keeping you from anything, and you get to make your own rules. And I think in yeah, maybe the current climate of college football, that I think that's important. Now, the only thing, and this will be a question I'll have for you, the SEC, they're adding Oklahoma and Texas. The SEC is about to make a boatload in the next deal. It expires,
Sure.
end of this next year will be their last year with CBS. The SEC on CBS is going away. They're going to ESPN.
Hmm.
They're going to make bank. Almost double of what the ACC makes per year. This is every school. Vanderbilt will get almost double of what Clemson gets.
Hmm.
Almost. And like that's astronomical. That's huge. How does Notre Dame keep up with that? And do you have to join a conference to keep up with that? Or can you just keep your NBC deal and make up the cash that way?
I'm glad you asked because that kind of leads into another point I have. People often talk about, the unfair advantage I guess Notre Dame has as an independent, and they often cite their deal with NBC. You know who makes more money from TV than Notre Dame? Every single Big Ten team. Yes, that includes Minnesota and Indiana and Purdue. Notre Dame actually brings in like $10 million less per year based on their NBC deal than Big Ten schools do from their TV deals. Yeah, Notre Dame. I think the NBC deal is about to expire. I would expect the next one, whoever they sign it with, to be quite a bit higher. But it's kind of, I don't know, like people say, well, it's not fair. Notre Dame is on national TV every single game. You know who else is on national TV every single game? All the other big name programs, all of them. This is not 1993 anymore.
Right.
We have ESPN and ESPN2 and ESPN News and ESPNU, and we have Fox and NBC and ABC all showing college football. Like, if
Yep.
you are a big
Yep.
name program, you will be on national TV every single week. That would not change for Notre Dame if they joined a conference or had to get rid of their NBC deal. That's a non-starter. That's ridiculous, frankly. Also, people might wonder why we keep talking about the ACC because you mentioned the SEC. Well, contractually, Notre Dame is obligated. Sorry, wrong word. They're obligated to join the ACC if they join a conference in like the next 25 years or something.
Really?
Yes, if
Did
they
not know
join a
that.
conference, it has to be the ACC. Now, we know how college football is these days. Contracts are made to be ripped up. So,
Yes.
like, it's not like there would be no way of doing it. I'm sure there would be lawsuits and payouts involved and all of that. Here's the one way I could get on board with Notre Dame joining a conference, and this is a greater college football thing. Like, if you want a true level playing field, take the top 75 teams in college football, create their own separate um, FBS light, if you will, and only have them play each other. Like, we're going to take the top 75 teams. They're not going to schedule San Diego State anymore. Like, you have to play each other. It would be like a larger um, kind of amateur version of the NFL. If the sport goes to that, and some people think it will eventually, then yeah, Notre Dame will be in. Like, they're joining that if like because Notre Dame is in it. They're maybe not quite as invested as some of the other schools are as far as when it comes to their football program, and that's maybe to their detriment, I would argue, over the last several decades. But they're in it enough; they want to be in the top level of football.
So I'm just going to this is hypothetical here. The
Sure.
hypothetical, but I will say last off season we actually thought this might have been possible, and it still could be. It still is not out of the realm of possibility. So what if Clemson and Ohio State next week declare that they are also joining the SEC? And the SEC is looking for a few more teams to round it out to an even 20. What if? What
See,
does Notre Dame do?
I think if it becomes their thing where if the SEC becomes the de facto top level of football, like their own national champion, basically,
Yeah.
then I think Notre Dame would join that. I don't think we'll ever see 20 teams or so have like their own separate complete level of football. I think what you're describing could happen, but it would have to be at least 30 or 40 teams. Like that would be conceivable to me. Um, I just don't know. I don't know. I don't think we'll see 20 teams as a complete separate top level of football. But I do think Notre Dame would be in that situation.
Would they be? I mean, they would have to ask to get in, right? Like, I think that would take you. So you're going to include Texas and Oklahoma, right? So then you add Clemson, Ohio State. Yet you're at 18 now, right? Yeah, by my count, you would need Notre Dame and throw in someone else. I throw in one, maybe USC or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that would try to round you out to 20, and it would almost be okay. Here, I've thought about this for a while. Sorry, and I'm going way off here, but like soccer and college football are actually very close to each other. They
Promotion,
are.
relegation.
Okay, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. You did. You said that. I didn't say that. But it would be a great idea. Like, why? I don't understand why not. I don't understand, like, even the NFL. Like, I don't understand why the NFL can't, like, work something out with that. Like, I don't understand why other sporting leagues aren't doing this. And because I think college football relates to soccer in the ways that the big teams win the championships. They just
Sure.
do. And there's not much you can do about it. Like, the big teams just have more money, so they buy better players, so they win more championships. So they have more money, so they buy better players, so they win more championships. Like, it's just a cycle there, and that's kind of what college football is too. And like, maybe we just go full on.
Sorry, Ashton, you cut out there for a little bit. What was the end of your thought there?
Yeah, no, I guess maybe what I'm saying is, like, since we're at this place anyway, where the big teams get more money, just win more championships. Like, let's just embrace the whole soccer concept, and let's have a super league. Like, let's go ahead and have a super league where all these teams are playing each other, and yeah, like, and would they get more money? Like, would it be unfair? Yeah, like, yeah, it would. Like, there's
It's
no
already
question
unfair.
that it would. Yeah, right. Like, I mean, it's like, that's exactly right. Like, as opposed to what it is now, which is so daisies for everybody and everyone gets a medal at the end. No, like, it is a cutthroat business. I think you realize in the last year, or at least I have, and I'm not a casual fan. Like, I'm a diehard fan, but like, college football is very cutthroat. You've seen it with the Texas Oklahoma stuff. We saw it with Lincoln Riley leaving and like all the coaching hires. We've seen like with the transfer portal and NIL stuff with players jumping around. This, like, college football is volatile right now. It's very volatile. And if you could get to like kind of like a super league type deal, you would be able to probably have a commissioner at that point. Like, and that's really what is needed. I think more like just at least like a governor, or like there needs to be a police out there, because the NCAA is so powerless right now. They can do nothing. Like, we need a power there that does govern and rule the sport, as every other sport has. Like,
Yeah.
college football is just completely unrelegated right now.
Yeah. I think the NCAA would be fine as long if they were competent. Like as an institution that is in control, more or less. Like, I think they would be fine if they were competent. And so I guess they're just not competent. And I guess maybe
No,
that's
no,
why I'm a little worried about, like, anything that college football programs put in charge of college football. Like, what makes us think that they can do a better job than what they've done already? Because I mean, the NCAA, they work for these universities. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Like, if all of these universities that are NCAA members teamed up and said, we don't actually want you, like, we want
right,
somebody else to be in charge, it would
right,
happen. Like, they
right,
put the NCAA in charge, and then they're supposed to listen to it. It's the same as, I mean, the NFL. The commissioner works for the owners. He might
yeah,
find them, but he actually
right.
works for them. Like, that's how it works. So I'm not quite positive. Like, yeah, we need new leadership, but maybe if these schools are the ones responsible for putting leadership in place, like, maybe they'll just screw it up again. I don't know. Who knows? That's probably overly negative. I don't know. I just, yeah, I'm with you with the whole. I do think there could be some fun changes like that where you could have some kind of promotion relegation system. Like, maybe if we had the top 50 teams, had the the top tier of college football, and then you had another
Right.
50 teams after that, and the bottom five have to drop down the next season, and the top five from the bottom 50 jump up the next season.
It'd
That's
be
kind of the
so
idea.
much fun. That would
That
be
would be
so much
fun.
fun. I
It
would
would,
love that.
and it would create drama down, past just the who's in. People care about six teams. At the end of the season, like
Right.
the four teams that are in the field right now, and the two that have a shot. I think if there was something like promotion relegation, like all of a sudden Wake Forest matters a lot more, and
Right.
that's maybe a bad example because they just had a good season.
Right.
Like maybe
Yeah.
Northwestern all of a sudden isn't just sitting pretty after
Yeah.
one year after they win their division, all of a sudden they're worried about dropping down to the next level.
Right.
That could be very interesting.
And then we could finally get Vanderbilt out of the dang SEC. Like they have to go. They're only Vanderbilt is only in the SEC for their GPA. They're trying to get the GPA up
Yeah.
for the conference, so they keep Vandy in. They just suck at everything except for baseball. Yeah, like I would love to get them out and I don't even care. Like get Oklahoma State in, Florida State, like any school, like Virginia. We'll take Virginia Tech over Vanderbilt
Yeah.
right now. It's a joke.
Yeah. So I guess to bring this full circle as it relates to Notre Dame, I would not be in favor of them joining the ACC, just because I think, personally, I just think that their schedule would be so much more boring. Now, I do think that Notre Dame would probably have, over a 10-year period, they'd probably have a better record as a member of the ACC and probably more playoff appearances. But I don't think they would necessarily be any closer to actually winning a title, and that's what I want for Notre Dame. I think it comes to I don't think Notre Dame winning a title has anything to do with them being in a conference or not. I think it comes down to recruiting better and developing that talent. And so that's why I'm hopeful for Marcus Freeman right now. They have the number one class in 2023. Obviously, we're 11 months away from signing day or whatever. But that's what it's going to take for them to actually get over that hump, because they have been a good second tier team in college football for a while now. And I don't think that joining a conference or staying independent, like neither one of those is the magic switch that you flip, and now Notre Dame is all of a sudden as good as Alabama and Ohio State. Like that's not what it is. Is joining a conference or not, I don't think would affect that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, no, we're at the same place with both of that. It's not going to affect you winning a title, which is what Notre Dame is gunning for.
Yeah.
And like I think you're fine where you're at as far as winning a title. Like you've been actually fairly close. I mean, you made the title game in 2012, got beat by 1,000, and then hey, but you made the playoff twice. Like there has been positives there for Notre Dame, and I don't know. I think like the demographics hurt, like the change, like the demographics of college football now. Like it's such a South centered sport right now, and like maybe that's not healthy. But we can do nothing about that. Like that is what it is, and I think Notre Dame would be better off, instead of trying to join a conference and get structure that way, is to ask Notre Dame has unlimited money. Like they really do. Like it feels like Notre Dame has unlimited money in the university, but not in the football program. And I think if there is some more freedom brought to the program as a whole, I think you could see Notre Dame take really big strides forward, because it's an arms race right now in college football. And money does matter. Like you can say that, like the coaches matter too, but money matters also. You have to have both to win titles. So you have to have coaching and money. And then you can parlay that into recruiting classes and wins from that. So like Notre Dame's in a good place right now. They are. I think they need to make a few tweaks maybe with their facilities and just like the overall structure in general to the football program. But it's decisions that they themselves can make and don't need other people to help.
I agree. Also, I had one other thing to say, just for it's not fair that Notre Dame is independent and is not in a conference crowd. If you go back 30, 35 years, here's a list of teams that used to be independent. All right. I'm going through here alphabetical order. Boston College. This is not everybody, by the way. This is just ones that stand out to me as I look at the list. Boston College, Cincinnati, Florida State, Louisville, Memphis, Miami, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Rutgers, South Carolina, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, West Virginia. Nobody forced any of those schools to join a conference. All of those schools that joined the conference They did so because they believed it was in their best interest, and they had every right to do so. When Notre Dame truly believes it's in their best interest to join a conference, they'll do it. That's You know who else could, like, theoretically, Georgia could go independent and be perfectly fine.
Yeah,
There's probably 10 schools in the country that actually have the cachet that it would on some level make sense for them to go independent.
right.
Notre Dame just happens to be one of the biggest names, maybe the biggest name worldwide. Probably not quite in the states, but just as far as their global reach, they're up there. I know Notre Dame students talk all the time. I've heard some of their players talk about how it's unique that they go to Notre Dame and they're going to college with somebody from Germany and somebody from South Korea, and, like, it's a unique place. Doesn't By the way, for those who heard me say it's better than everyone else, that's not what I said. I said it's unique.
Yeah.
It's okay to be unique. Everyone's unique in their own way. So yeah, like, I guess I just get a little sick and tired of that. I don't know. Like, is it unfair that Notre Dame has a bigger name than West Virginia? I don't know. Is it also unfair that Alabama has a bigger name than West Virginia? What are we talking about? Like I said,
Right.
Notre Dame makes $10 million less from TV than Big Ten schools do. So I don't know. Like, I hear a lot of stupid arguments online as a Notre Dame fan. It's okay for you to hate Notre Dame. You can hate Notre Dame. Anybody out there, you're allowed to. Just maybe make logical arguments when you want to hate Notre Dame.
I don't think as many people hate them as you think they do. Like, I think maybe because I'm in the South, like people in the South just don't like really care. Like Notre Dame's not
Sure.
really on the radar as much. It's not who we're competing against. But like if you're like you're in the Midwest, like you're a Big Ten school, like yeah, it's kind of a stick, like just kind of a thorn in the side, maybe a little bit. That like like why do they think that they're so special? They just get all this preferential treatment. But no, I don't feel it's that way at all. I think it's a good thing. I think more teams should do it, or at least consider the option. I think it would be good as far if you want to break up like the big conference stuff. Like if you're against that, you want Notre Dame to stay independent. You want more schools to be independent
Yeah.
if possible, just kind of to break up the power structure that we have going on right now.
You know what would be like? You know what would make for an incredible season, and just an incredible college football experience, would be if everyone was independent and the top 75 teams only played the other top 75 teams. Like, if you all of a sudden had Alabama playing, well, okay, they're going to play Texas and Oklahoma here soon, but if you had Alabama and Ohio State playing the regular season every 10 years, like that type of thing. Or, okay, let's forget that for a second. Keep your conferences. Maybe every conference should play 8 games. None of them play any FCS opponents, and you only could play one G5. Play 3 legit non-conference opponents. How fun would that be? Not as a Notre Dame fan, as a college football fan, I think the more we get teams playing teams from other conferences, the more we have teams scheduling the way Notre Dame does, the more exciting college football would be. Just my opinion.
No, I'm with you there. I think there's so much change coming on, and real quick, I know we got to go, but like just to throw one more just kind of cherry on top of all of this, all the change that's happening. Would you rather go to 8 teams in the playoff or back to 2?
I I've been saying it for 14 years. The best playoff would be 8 at-large teams, in my opinion. I would
Eight,
love 8 at-larges.
it'll never happen. Like the conferences won't agree.
Yeah, I know. They're going to want their automatic bids for conference champions, and then if Northwestern upsets Ohio State, then gets in with 5 losses, then yay.
Yeah.
Then 2 loss Notre Dame is out, and 5 loss Northwestern is in. Boo hoo.
Yep.
But
It's truth.
by the way, the other thing I've heard a lot is Notre Dame has an unfair advantage as an independent because they don't have to play a conference championship game. I would point out, as the basis of this question, Notre Dame lost 1 game this year, did not make the playoff. I think it's easier for Notre Dame to go undefeated and make the playoff. It's harder for Notre Dame to make the playoff with 1 loss because they don't have that extra opportunity to prove themselves to the playoff committee. I've been saying that since the playoff came around, and people have been making the same arguments. Yeah, like, it it hurts one year and it helps the other. it pretty much comes out the wash in the end. And that's kind of where this whole discussion comes, in my opinion. Like that's kind of where it all ends up. It really doesn't make a huge difference either way. It really doesn't.
Agree completely.
All right, man. I feel like I could go on. I probably ranted more on this episode than I ever have.
Yeah.
I've been in enough Twitter wars over this to kind of have my arguments about memorized. Oh man. But anyway, anything else we should talk about before we wrap this up?
No, I'm good. I'm good to go. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a great week, everybody, and God bless.